워싱턴 DC에 위치한 민간연구단체 헤리티지 재단에서는 1995년부터 삼성의 후원으로 이병철 삼성 창업주를 기리는 이병철 강의를 매년 진행하고 있습니다. B.C.Lee 렉처에선 국제관계나 외교에 관련된 내용을 주로 다룹니다. 지난 7월 11일 조현동 주미대사, 영김 공화당 연방하원의원, 빌 해거티 공화당 상원의원을 초대해 브루스 클링너 성임연구원의 사회로 포럼을 가졌습니다.
As Mr. Morgan said, this is the 70th anniversary year of the creation of the U.S.-South Korea alliance. It's also the 70th anniversary later this month of the armistice, which ended the brutal war. And it's also a less well-known anniversary. It is the 30th anniversary of when I started working on Korean issues. And so I have now been working on Korea for literally almost half my life. And for those of you doing the math in the audience, yes, I'm quite old. I've now been focusing on Korea for quite some time. It really became an immersive experience because along the way, my wife, my 3 children, and I all have acquired multiple black belts in Korean martial arts. So we try not to get in arguments when we're at home. And like most longtime Korea watchers in the U.S., focusing on Korea for so long and focusing on the people both in North and South Korea, it becomes much more than an analytic exercise. It becomes not just a matter of the head, but really of the heart. And so for many of us, we've traveled there more times than we can count. We have many long and deep friendships with Koreans. We celebrate the miracle on the Han River, and we also remain vigilant against the ever-growing threat from the north. And our hearts ache for the cruel conditions that the North Korean people endure. And we also hope that and yearn for the day that we can all have a united Korea. We can walk across what used to be the demilitarized zone. And as a result of that, the Korea Watchers, we inevitably become very strong advocates for the bilateral relationship and fierce defenders of the alliance. And today, I'm very honored to be joined by 3 very special guests who have a long involvement in Asia and are strong advocates of America's strong relationships with our critically important allies in Northeast Asia. Ambassador Cho, I've known you for quite some time. I have at least 4 business cards from you over the years, and I don't have all of them, and I need to get your new one. But I had Deputy Secretary of the President for National Security Strategy, DCM, Special Advisor to the Minister, and Ambassador, Director General, North Korean Nuclear Affairs Bureau. And I understand you were stationed at the embassy here on the 50th anniversary of the alliance, and also DCM during the 60th, and then we now have you here for the 70th. So we look forward to inviting you back to Heritage 10 years from now to celebrate the 80th when you are either foreign minister or president. So thank you very much for being here. Representative Kim, I only have 1 business card from you, but it's from 2007. So again, we've known each other for quite some time. It was when you were the district representative and director of Asian Community Affairs for Congressman Ed Royce. So look forward to, again, having you here, and thank you for being here. Senator Hagerty, I don't have a business card, but I'm hoping today is the beginning of a long-time relationship and anything that I or the Heritage Foundation can do for you in your support on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. We look forward to that.
Thank you, Bruce.
And just to point out, Senator Hagerty has a pressing engagement and will have to leave us at 11 o'clock. So it's not in response to a question that I asked that he's leaving, but he does have a very pressing schedule this day. So I want to start sort of very broadly a 30,000-foot level question. And I'll start with Ambassador Cho to kind of get us started. President Yoon has initiated very different policies from his predecessor, and only 2 weeks after his inauguration, he hosted President Biden for a meeting in Korea, and then we had a very successful summit just a few months ago in April. So how do you see the overall trajectory of the relationship, and what do you see as the future agenda topics?
Well, Bruce, first of all, thank you for inviting me today. And I'm honored to join many of President here, particularly with the honorable two members of Congress, Hagerty and Representative Young Kim. And I also like to recognize a group of young leaders from North Korea. I think I'm going to have a meeting this afternoon at the embassy. When it comes to the bilateral ROK-US relations, I think I should start with the state visit in late April, which was a huge success, as you have witnessed. Well, I think the President Yoon's visit to Washington, I believe, has opened a new chapter of the 70-year-old alliance into a brighter and more brilliant future for another 70 years. They've achieved a lot, but I'd like to mention the three key takeaways from the visit. Number one, we have upgraded our security alliance into a new level by adopting Washington Declaration. So we both presidents agreed to strengthen the extended deterrence in response to North Korea's growing threat of nuclear and missile capabilities. So adoption of the Washington Declaration is a very significant development. I think it's an evolution of the Mutual Defense Treaty, which was signed in 1953. And number two, they have agreed to expand the alliance from the security-related alliance to another level of wide scope of aspect, including economic security and cutting-edge technology and other areas. For instance, we have agreed to expand our cooperation in cyberspace and also space cooperation. So one of the achievements is to issue agreement on establishment of next generation of critical and emerging technologies dialogue, which will be chaired by the national security advisors of the countries, which is a significant understanding. Well, I think good progress is the most important one, and we have demonstrated that our alliance is deeply rooted and based on the shared value of freedom, democracy, and rule of law and human rights. I think that was clearly demonstrated when he made a speech at the joint session of the Congress and received a sensational reaction by the members of the Congress. And also in that context, we are going to expand our people-to-people exchange, in particular for the younger generation, which will be the foundation of future alliance for the coming decade. So that is the overall assessment of the state visit. And probably in the future topics, I believe the alliance is going global. So not only from the beyond the Korean Peninsula and beyond East Asia, the alliance will be playing a major role in expanding its cooperation in many aspects of global issues. So there will be some multilateral cooperation beginning from the trilateral cooperation involving Korea, U.S., and Japan, and another unilateral kind of cooperation in Asia Pacific. And probably there will be more cooperation in the context of NATO. And we are making every effort to provide assistance to Ukraine as well in close coordination of the United States. So overall, I think the future of the alliance has never been brighter. So I'm happy and I'm honored to make some contribution to the strength of our alliance. Let me stop here.
Senator Hagerty, you've had a unique viewpoint of looking at America's two important alliances in Northeast Asia, not only from your service on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, but your previous tenure as the ambassador to Japan. So, as Ambassador Cho has pointed out, the outlook right now is quite rosy, not only with Korea, but also with Japan. What is your views right now, the overall relationship with both Korea and with Japan from Washington?
Well, Bruce, before, and I'll give you my business card. Before I start, though, I would say what an honor it is to be with you and be hosted here at Heritage Foundation. Ambassador Cho, such an important relationship. My congratulations to you. What an amazing success to deliver a state visit so early in your career here as ambassador. I know what an incredible task that is, but it is a wonderful honor too. So my congratulations to you. You come at a very critical time in U.S. Korea relations, so I look forward to working with you more. Welcome. Representative Kim, it's so good to see you again. Your contributions to this relationship are deep and reach very, very far. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your leadership. Look forward to working with you on a continuous basis. I was honored to be in the House of Representatives when President Yoon was there to speak to us as a delegation. He had a great admiration for you there. It was very obvious and palpable in the room. So thank you for your leadership. Back to how I see things right now. I think that the challenges before our alliance could not be greater. The ambassador touched on the positive aspects of our alliance between the United States and South Korea, and I'll add Japan to that next on a trilateral basis. But the challenges that we see together are significant, whether it be a more belligerent North Korea or China, that in some ways facilitates North Korea's behavior, and in other ways continues to exercise extraordinarily predatory practices, whether it be predatory economic practices. By that I mean stealing our intellectual property, forcing technology transfer, subsidizing industries, competing unfairly in terms of market access. We have seen dramatic predatory behavior on a military basis too. The South China Sea now has artificial islands that have been established there by the Chinese Communist Party. I remember vividly President Xi coming here, standing in the Rose Garden next to President Obama back about 2015, saying that he had no intention to militarize those islands. If you look at it today, and again, I would encourage you to Google Fiery Cross Reef if you have not. These islands are militarized, about half a dozen of them, by the way, in one of the busiest sea lanes in the world. This sort of predatory posture is unacceptable, yet China persists in it. Cybersecurity, a great challenge. I served on the committee to address that from a number of angles, but we've seen China invade our sovereignty with its spy balloon. They invade our sovereignty every day, though, with their cyber threats and their cyber attacks and the theft of intellectual property that is continuous. Moving to Cuba, 100 miles off our shore. Again, another aggressive position that we're seeing right here at home, but I want to make it clear that our allies in South Korea, our allies in Japan deal with this every day. And when I served as United States Ambassador to Japan, I spent a tremendous amount of time on the trilateral relationship, initially with Vince Brooks, who was running our military presence there, and later with General Abrams, but importantly, meeting with officials in South Korea. When President Moon was in office, spending time with Foreign Minister Kang, spending time with the National Security Advisor Chung. At the time, he eventually took over the Foreign Minister's job there. What I've seen in this new administration with President Yoon is a move much closer. I think an appreciation of the deep need for a strong security alliance. And I again, very much look forward to working with you, Ambassador, to deepening those relations. It could not come at a more critical time. I'll say this too, for those of you that are here from North Korea, can you raise your hand? I have a deep respect and admiration for what you've been through. I remember vividly the day that H.E held his crutch in the air at the United States State of the Union address. That happened shortly after my family met with him and a group of your colleagues. And that happened because we wanted to express our support and our appreciation and our admiration for the freedom that you fought so hard to address. And the relationship that my family, my children have built with some of you has made a big mark on our lives. And we want to be there to continue to support you as you become part of society again. And as you, I hope, make very clear what the conditions are like in North Korea. I think your voices carry a very important message. So thank you. You have my ultimate respect.
Thank you, sir. As a follow-on, it seems one of the most tangible signals of deterrence and reassurance, both to North Korea and South Korea, are the resumption last year of the large-scale U.S.-South Korean bilateral military exercises, as well as resumption of trilateral exercises along with Japan. How important do you see that development as a signal, not only to our opponents, but to our allies? And are there additional steps you think the U.S. should take to really show our commitment to the defense of our allies to deter actions, not only by North Korea, but also from China?
Bruce, given your background, I'm not surprised you asked this question. I think it's terribly important. The joint exercises that we're talking about does invite more belligerent behavior in North Korea, but I don't accept that because the impact of those joint exercises is significant. I've seen it with my own eyes. And I've seen our progress in terms of capability and interoperability when we do have joint exercises, when our teams work together. Because of a number of security issues, it's very hard for our information systems to directly link. So it's terribly important that our human relations link directly, that we obtain the benefit of working together, of developing that sort of cadence that all of us understand. So I'm incredibly supportive of more joint exercises, not only to send an important message to North Korea, to the CCP, and to others around the world about the strength of our alliance, but because it delivers very real and very tangible benefits to our own capability. If you look at what's happening in Japan right now, they are going to take a significant increase in their defense budget. They're going to go from 1% to 2% of their GDP expenditures on defense over the next 5 years. I applaud that. Listen, when Prime Minister Abe was the Prime Minister, he wanted to do this. We talked about this on a number of occasions. What's happened with China's aggression, particularly in the wake of the fall of Afghanistan and the behavior of Russia entering Ukraine and the increased pressure now that the CCP is putting on Taiwan, Japanese public opinion has shifted dramatically. And what Prime Minister Abe did not achieve, Prime Minister Kishida is able to achieve because public sentiment has moved. Komieto, which is the junior partner, if you will, of the coalition that works together with the LDP in Japan, a pacifist group, have now conceded that we do need to step up. We need to see this greater presence. But every time I meet with my colleagues, I remind them that we've got to focus on interoperability and on our lethality, not just on spending more money, but on confidence. And these sort of exercises go directly to that point.
Thank you very much. I would like to keep you for the next hour or more to answer questions, but I want to be mindful of your time and your very busy schedule. And I think I'm getting the signal from your staffers that, oh, okay, I will sneak one more question in. You can blame them if you're late, huh? Another one is last year you introduced legislation to impose additional sanctions on North Korea, particularly their ability to generate revenue to fund its unlawful WMD programs. A lot of that is from cyber activity, which we're all very aware of North Korea's nuclear weapons and their missiles. The cyber capabilities, I think, are much less understood or appreciated as the threat that they are. What additional sanctions or actions do you think the U.S. should be taking against North Korea in conjunction with our allies as well as the United Nations?
First, I'll say this. We need to enforce existing sanctions very, very aggressively. We worked extraordinarily hard when I served as U.S. Ambassador to Japan in that region to block ship transfers of coal to the CCP. We worked very hard to stop the proliferation of North Korean workers when we know the country's generate hard currency and send it back again to fund the program. One of the things, though, that was a persistent weakness and a persistent issue was cybercrime by North Koreans. Lazarus and others are very, very effective, and they are finding ways to get around our systems, around our security, and again fund the development of North Korea's illicit nuclear weapon program. So we need to use every tactic and every angle that we can to shut off the resources, the financial resources that they're able to obtain, that they're able to obtain. And I think the best way for us to do this is to work as closely as we possibly can with our allies in South Korea, with our allies around the region and our allies around the globe, to share best practices with respect to cybersecurity and to impose even greater sanctions. And again, enforce those that we have and look for opportunities to impose more, to shut off the flow of financial resources that's enabling North Korea to continue its proliferation.
Right, and I know there have been not only a recent agreement between Washington and Seoul on cyber, but also a lot of new meetings, new groups to try to better implement that. And we've seen some estimates that North Korea is generating $1 billion a year from cybercrime, which is much more efficient than their previous counterfeiting and other crimes. And I think any Korea watcher has been hacked or attempted to be hacked numerous times. We know they target members of Congress along with the government and banks. So, as you point out, there's the sanctions we have and the U.S. law enforcement measures are very robust, but through successive administrations, they have not been fully implemented. Particularly, I think, with China. There are Chinese banks and businesses, we seem to have a hesitancy.
Enabling and facilitating this, exactly.
Right. And so, as much as we want to impose new UN resolutions or U.S. legislation, there's, I think, as you point out, is a greater impetus in enforcing the laws that we already have on the books, but for some reason have been hesitant to fully enforce, not only against North Korea, but I think particularly Chinese banks and businesses.
I couldn't agree more, Bruce.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
And thanks for having me today. Thanks, Dr.
Representative Kim, thank you for your patience. We've already made mention of President Yoon's speech to Congress, and I first read it and thought it was masterful, and then I watched the video and was even more struck. But it must have been particularly moving while seeing it in person, and as he called out to you particularly. So, kind of, what were your impressions not only of that speech, but also yours and perhaps overall Congress view of the relationship right now?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me, and it's really an honor to be here in the same room with the distinguished Ambassador Cho and Senator Hagerty. Thank you for being here, everyone in the room, and I especially also want to echo and welcome the delegation from North Korea who have experienced some of the unimaginable things, those of us who live out here. But I look forward to also meeting you and welcoming you and having a dialogue later today. I was very glad to be able to welcome President Yoon to Washington and also serve on the escort committee to bring him to the House floor to listen to his address to the joint sessions. That visit was very, very timely. It couldn't have come at a better time because, as Ambassador Cho mentioned, we are now celebrating the 70th alliance of our U.S. Rock Alliance. This is very, very meaningful. When I was named the Indo-Pacific Subcommittee early this year, and I learned that President Yoon is planning a trip to the United States, I immediately went to Chairman McCall and said, we need to make sure President Yoon can speak at joint sessions. And we encouraged both of us to contact the speaker to extend the official invitation for President Yoon. And I'm so glad that on our recent CODEL to South Korea, to Asia, including Japan and South Korea, when we landed there, we got the notice that the speaker has allowed us to officially extend the invitation to President Yoon. And we were at the White House when the president was welcoming us. We're having conversation. And for me, as an immigrant from South Korea who was born in the aftermath of the Korean War, for me to be in that position at that very historical time and asking the president to come to the United States and asking him, if you come to Washington and deliver at joint sessions, what would be the key points that you would like to talk about? And I knew at the time that he said he will just expand on the Indo-Pacific strategy that South Korea has released. And I said it couldn't have been such a timely issue because it's no coincidence that the United States has an Indo-Pacific strategy, South Korea has Indo-Pacific strategy. This is a very, very important time because, again, U.S. ROC alliance was based on shared values, as was talked about, on human rights, democracy, freedom, rule of law, which President Yoon reiterated during his speech and also during all of the meetings, even at the White House with President Biden. So that was very significant. And over the past year, as you know, President Yoon has been such a willing ally. And he sent a very strong and clear message to that Republic of Korea stands willing and ready to work with the United States and other allies to ensure that the Indo-Pacific remains free and open. And so the timing of strengthening our alliance couldn't have been at critical time. And as you asked, like what was going through my mind as I was watching the president speak, I was talking about, because the night before he came to Congress, he was at the state dinner. And I had just left the state dinner around 10 p.m. wearing my beautiful hanbok because I had to go back to my Financial Services Committee markup. And I just went in there and stayed in the room for another hour and a half until we finished our business wearing hanbok. This was a way that I said, oh my God, how many times do you see a member of Congress wearing hanbok and doing the business? But those were some of the things that went through mind. And then I'm hearing, right after I left, President Yoon has sang the American Pie. Okay. The confidence that President Yoon exhibited, and the conversation that he's held and the leadership that is exhibited, I think this really goes to show you how far South Korea has come. We talked about the miracle of Han River. Every time I go back to Korea, and I get to travel and pass through Han River, I talk about the before and after Korean War. And during I believe either 60th or previous the alliance of the U.S. ROC alliance, South Korean government has commissioned to produce a historical pictorial book, Korea before and after. So you see all the photos before Korean War were black and white. All the photos after Korean War is obviously in color, to signify the development and how far Korea has come. And so I use that to, whenever I meet with the veterans, especially those American War veterans of the Korean War, throughout my work in the district, I always present them with a book. And they are in tears. And this is what I was thinking about when I was listening to President Yoon's speech. And also the day before, of course, the embassy hosted a special event to honor 3 American War veterans of the Korean War with the highest Taegeuk medal of I think it was the Order of Military Merit. And when I saw that, for someone who has done numerous times of representing our country, meaning the United States, my home, adopted home, and recognizing the veterans who have served valiantly to provide my homeland the freedom that we enjoy today, and to protect the people they never knew until they came to Korea because it was the right thing to do. They were called to serve, they didn't hesitate, and that's why I'm here today. And who would have thought 50-some years later, this young girl who immigrated from South Korea would be in the same room welcoming South Korea president to the House floor and be able to serve with you like this as a chairwoman of the Indo-Pacific. So there are a lot of things that went on, but again, we talked about the Washington Declaration. I think that was really a significant step in the right direction. It also is a recognition of South Korea's willingness to work very closely with the United States and other allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific to be really step up and become not only the economic partner that it already is, but very strong security partner And so I thought that was really good because, again, Washington Declaration will now allow the ROK, Republic of Korea, to participate more in planning and doing the exercises with the American nuclear assets. And the Washington Declaration will also allow the deployment of the nuclear-armed submarines to the region. So this was a much-needed reassurance to, America providing South Korea the extended the deterrence and sent a very, very strong message to Kim Jong-un that stop your nuclear ambition. If you do, there will be countermeasure, there will be a consequence because South Korea is wrapping up, working very closely, not only with the United States, but again, we're not going to tolerate those very malign behaviors. So all in all, I was very teary-eyed. This was very, very emotional for me personally. And as you saw, when President Yoon named some of the South Korean government's foreign direct investment in some of the member states, you saw Chairman McCall standing up and cheering, and we were doing high fives on the House floor. I mean, we have come a long way, and the relationship between U.S. and South Korea couldn't have been better. It was already very strong, but I think President Yoon's April visit really solidified where we stand and where we're going in the future. But obviously there is a lot more I would say, but especially because we have in the audience the North Korean defectors, I want to tell you that my policy priorities in the Indo-Pacific, and as a member who serves on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, human rights will be one of the critical policy areas for me to serve on. And even as a long time ago when I was working as a congressional staff, this was a very important issue for me with the North Korean defectors and refugees that I came across, meeting very, very closely over the years. I will make sure that, working closely with the Biden administration, that we keep the North Korea's human rights on the front runner, and that does not let it go sideways and, be forgotten.
Well, thank you for all those thoughts of your emotional feelings when seeing the speech. That was very wonderful.
You missed the moment the music died.
Continuing on North Korea, Ambassador Cho, President Yoon has returned human rights to Seoul's policy toward Pyongyang. In a break from his predecessor, he's now criticized Pyongyang's human rights violations. He filled the envoy position for human rights. He co-sponsored, or Seoul co-sponsored the North Korean human rights resolution. And during the April summit, First Lady Kim met with Cindy Warmbier, the mother of Otto Warmbier. What additional steps do you see that Seoul could take in conjunction with Washington and others to try to improve the human rights conditions in North Korea?
Well, you remember that when President took oath as new President of the Republic of Korea, he underlined the importance of principles laid down for the freedom, democracy, human rights, and rule of law. So, human rights situation in North Korea, I think, will be always the priority agenda for his foreign policy. So this year, we mark the 75th anniversary of the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and also its 10th anniversary of the establishment of COI, UN Commission of Inquiry on North Korean human rights situation. So we believe this is the right time to raise the global awareness of North Korean human rights problem. And in that context, as the Korean government reappointed the Ambassador for International Cooperation on North Korean human rights, Professor Lee Shi-hwan. And we, as you said, we have joined as co-sponsor the UN resolutions on North Korean human rights, not only UNJ, but also UN Human Rights Councils. And also for the first time, recently, the Korean government released the comprehensive report on North Korean human rights situation. The English version of the report will be released shortly. It will be in your desk very soon. And all in all, I think, and also President Yoon reiterated that the raising global awareness of human rights situation in the international community is indeed consistent with the national interest of the Republic of Korea. Because while North Korea has continued to grow its nuclear and missile capabilities, but raising this issue of human rights, North Korean human rights situation in the international community will be another kind of deterrence against North Korea's bad behavior and their continued provocation. So we are going to step up our efforts to solidify the international community's effort to work together on North Korean human rights. I'm personally, my parents from both sides, they were born in North Korea, the Gwangyang province, and then fled during just before the Korean War. So I have no idea. I think they probably have some family that we have no idea whether they are still alive or not. So I think as an ambassador to the United States, the North Korean human rights will be my priority agenda during my term, to raise this issue and to work together with the American friends to this end.
Thank you. Representative Kim, we've seen reporting how the economic and the food situation in North Korea is deteriorating. And the metric we always use is it better or worse than the Great Famine of the 1990s. But in any case, we know the situation is quite poor for a number of reasons, including its self-imposed COVID restrictions on trade, even cutting off government-sponsored smuggling. If Pyongyang were to loosen the COVID restrictions on travel, on imports, should the U.S. offer food and humanitarian and medical assistance, or should there be some kind of conditions on that, as well as allowing aid workers to go in? There's been restrictions after the Otto Warmbier situation. How do you see what we should do regarding the humanitarian situation?
I would like to address that, but I also want to follow up on what Ambassador Cho said too. But first of all, with regard to providing food and medicine and other type of humanitarian support to North Korea, I would welcome that, and because but I'm also very concerned about the safety of any aid workers that we will be sending to North Korea. As you know, I have to remind you that the United States has offered humanitarian assistance many times. And I know South Korea also offered to provide COVID-19 vaccines, but it was Kim Jong-un who refused to accept those to the perils of its own people. So even if Pyongyang loosens its COVID-19 restrictions, I'm not sure if Kim Jong-un is ready to accept our offer, very generous offer from the United States, Korea, and other allies in the area. So again, I have introduced a legislation, North Korea Human Rights Reauthorization Act, in which we talk about providing the humanitarian assistance, among other things. And so we will try to work through that process and work with our agencies like USAID and other aid workers, humanitarian supporters that has already been doing it. So hopefully maybe we can use that venue. But I also want to address the human rights issues. Again, we know how awful and atrocious it is, but nobody knows since COVID lockdown. There have not been any movement going back and forth. Even the North Korean defectors who had looked for the opportunity to cross that river and find some safe haven in China before they finally make their way into South Korea or other places. We just don't know what's going on. We don't know how many people have been starved to death. We just don't know. Most recently, BBC had a series of documents about those North Koreans starving to death. And I was able to offer my thoughts on that. This is really a welcome documentary that BBC was doing, and I was able to talk about the times when I was working on that issue, how we need to keep on the pressure as an international community to North Korea, that any regime, any country that violates human rights the way that Kim Jong-un does and his previous father, Kim Jong-il, grandfather, Kim Il-sung. I mean, again, we need to bring that to the front burner and keep talking about it. Look, Biden administration, if I may just evaluate the Biden administration's current, 2 years in office, he came into the office, emphasizing his commitment to promote human rights around the globe. But there has been a lot of talk, less action, or should I say action that hasn't come fast enough. I can point to like 3 areas. It was just December of last year when we finally saw a new wave of U.S. sanctions on individuals or groups that are involved in the human rights violation in North Korea. This was the first time since President Biden came into office. And it was more than a year, or almost a year, when we saw a nominee for the U.S. ambassadorship to South Korea. That again was, way overdue. And lastly, it was only recently when President Biden nominated a special envoy for North Korea human rights. This is, again, 2 years into his office. So these positions that have been left unfilled have really undermined our efforts to address the human rights abroad and globally. So that's why I am, really serious about making sure that human rights, not just on North Korea issues, but how China is treating its own people, and especially in the Uyghur region. And we saw what happened with Taiwan, Hong Kong. We have to speak out, and now we have to work closely, bring a unified voice to let those authoritarian dictators know that we're not going to tolerate this anymore.
Thank you. And just to point out on the humanitarian situation or providing aid, despite a lot of misperceptions, there are no sanctions or restrictions either in U.S. legislation or UN resolutions against the provision of humanitarian assistance, food, or medical aid. Oftentimes people feel that the U.S. has sanctioned those, and that's one of the reasons for the conditions of the North Korean people.
So, Bruce, if I may just add one more point. Well, we certainly welcome the nomination of Ms. Julie Turner as
Let's hope Senate
human rights from the United States. So if she is confirmed by Senate, look forward to working very hard together with her. So now we have ladies from Korea, the Professor Lee Shin-won, the Korean ambassador for North Korean human rights. And if Julie Turner is confirmed, actually you will represent the United States. And we have a special rapporteur of the UN, Ms. Salmon, on North Korean human rights. Now we have Young Kim from the Congress. So we will have 4 ladies working closely for the Nobel Cause of Human Rights situation.
I love it. There is a saying that women are consensus builders, women are problem solvers. I really look forward to also seeing Ms. Julie Turner being confirmed by the Senate hopefully soon, and I look forward to working with her on promoting all these human rights issues.
Okay. I want to go back to the extended deterrence and the Washington Declaration, which we've discussed. Ambassador Cho, during my trips to Korea in December and January, I had sort of a sense of a growing crisis on the issue of the U.S. extended deterrence guarantee. There seemed to be a much greater advocacy by advocates in South Korea for an indigenous nuclear weapon, even more than return of U.S. tactical nuclear weapons to the peninsula. It had moved from sort of fringe discussion to very mainstream. And then by April, there was sort of this very huge reversal We had the very successful summit. We had the Washington Declaration, the creation of the Nuclear Consultative Group, which will have its first meeting very soon this month. Do you see that the Republic of Korea is now reassured by those initiatives, the tabletop exercises, et cetera, or is the jury still out on the Nuclear Consultative Group and the overall issue, and that perhaps after another North Korean provocation that the issue will come back to the forefront?
Well, thank you for asking that question. But actually, first of all, the Washington Declaration, adopted by the two presidents during the state visit, was very unique and milestone, very between the two countries. I would say it is an upgraded version of the Mutual Defense Treaty, which was signed in 1953. As two presidents agreed at the joint statement, any kind of North Korea's nuclear attack will be faced with immediate, overwhelming, and decisive response by the United States, including the nuclear asset. And also, President Biden himself publicly mentioned that. And in that case, it will lead to the end of the North Korean regime. That's a very powerful statement. And the first round of the Nuclear Consultative Group, which you mentioned, will be held in Seoul next week, and will be chaired by the senior officials of the National Security Council. And they will be engaged in very serious discussions on information sharing and joint planning and execution of the use of U.S. nuclear assets in case of contingency of the Korean Peninsula. Well, I think for the time being, that we believe the best option for us to deal with North Korea's nuclear threat. And as President Yoon mentioned publicly, we are going to adhere to NPT regime while we're going to strengthen our extended deterrence based on nuclear asset. Well, that kind of debate and controversy over the possible indigenous nuclear program, well, it could be at the end of experts and politicians and journalists. But as far as the government is concerned, our position is very clear. That is the best way for us now.
Thank you. Representative Kim, there, sort of from a U.S. viewpoint, we might wonder, what more can we do? We have our forces there, we have our treaty, we have our commitments, et cetera. But do you think there are additional steps that the U.S. can do to better deter North Korea, better reassure South Korea, and not only on the nuclear component of the overall extended deterrence, but are there also steps that we can take with the Republic of Korea on their own conventional forces to enhance the deterrence as well as the reassurance aspect?
I think we need to assure that the United States and its allies work more closely so that we can build the security assurance and counter the aggression that we see from both China and North Korea collectively. Because, obviously we also, as Senator Hagerty mentioned before he left, I think we need to engage more in the multi-nation exercises like WINPAC. We've seen that, but also we need to also do more trilateral exercises between U.S., Japan, and South Korea. During my trip to Japan in April, we were on the 7th fleet and saw the exercises and how multi-nations come together to plan and operate together. And the message was very clear that they are all doing this with one common thread in mind, and that's China. So we need to be doing more there, and I think that really ensures the greater interoperability and sends a very, very strong message that we are presenting a unified front against the aggression from China and North Korea at the same time.
Well, I have several pages of questions here, so it shouldn't take more than about 2 or 3 more hours. So, but we are at our scheduled end time, and I want to be very mindful of your very busy schedule. So I hope we can perhaps have you back and earlier than 10 years from now. So please join me in thanking our two